Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an instructive game to share with you from the 2025 FIDE World Cup. This was played today, November 24th. On the white end, Andrey Esipenko playing against Nodirbek Yakubboev. Alright, this is game 1 of 2, classical time controls. This is the third place match. The player who finishes in third will be the 8th and final qualifier for the candidates tournament next year. That candidates event begins March 28th. All right, this game here, we have an open Sicilian, 4 knights, exchange, variation, invasive pawn, knight d5, knight e4, light square bishops out and about, queen c7, attack and defense, bishop preserved, knight under fire, now defended. Pop quiz. How would you continue here? Pause the video if you'd like. Okay, in the game, bishop d5 is played. The top move is c4. I believe a train of thought with bishop d5 is my knight's going to be kicked soon, and when it falls back to c6, my bishop will not be obstructed by the knight. It's more actively posted on d5 compared to b7. Now, there are many positives to note behind this top move c4. For one, white can forget about kicking the knight with the c-pawn. Knight d3 is there. And another detail, this c-pawn for white can now not play to c4. White cannot quickly take over control of this d5 square. Finally, this diagonal here has opened up with c4, so queen, bishop landing a timely check in some lines. You could be sure the king is going to be castled kingside in this game. Here's a line where you could see c2 to c4 be effective. So let's say at this moment, rather than the move in the game, there's bishop e7, the a-pawn gives the knight a kick. If you want to go to this center post, well, it's short-lived. Find a new home. This is not a pleasant post for the knight. Okay. Notice the difference here if the top move c4 is played. a3, knight d5, there's no c4. Yes, the knight is still obstructing the bishop, but the knight is more actively posted. d5 versus c6. This knight has an influence on this dark square bishop. Forget about e3. Okay. No c4 in this position. It's bishop d5, castles. From here, bishop e7 is played. This a2 pawn is poison. Bishop captures pawn. The knight is not a reliable defender of the bishop. c3 is there. Also, knight captures a2. The bishop is not a reliable defender of the knight. Knight d6 would be there. And this point is going to collapse. This is a losing position for black. So a2 pawn, poison. We have here bishop e7, multiple choice, pop quiz. How would you challenge the knight here? Are you going with a3 or c3? Pause the video if you'd like. Okay, the move in the game, c3. This is the higher quality move. Why not control b4 and this d4 square? White with c3 is effectively offsetting the c5 pawn, and black can't forget about this pivot in the center. Another pop quiz. How would you respond here? Pause the video if you'd like. Okay, bishop e3 is played here. Top move is to sink the knight into d6 with check. In the end, black cannot take this pawn. Queen takes pawn, walks into a pin. c4 would be there. So it says you have to exchange bishops and then move the queen, and it likes f5. Very comfortable position for white. Evaluation plus 1.1. 2 disruptive pawns. This last move has opened up the bishop's eyes to a few new squares. Not all of them. Wonderful. Okay. Very nice position here for white. We do not see knight d6. More development. Bishop e3. Castles. Knight g3. Light square bishop exchange. And from here d5 is played. This is a fine structure to enter. Another path is with f5. In both cases, it says to take en passant. Now, in the case of f5 and the capture on f6, you can recapture with the bishop. c5 is not a good pawn to capture. It's looking at rook a to d1 and c4 here. In the case of bishop captures pawn, there's a knight e5 resource, and white would have no better, must capture the knight here. Moving the queen, trying to defend, the queen is not a stable defender. So you'd have to take the knight, allow the bishop to fall with check. In the end, the bishop recaptures, and it prefers black. Not a surprise, open position, superior minor piece for black. Okay. We don't see f5, it's d5, and white takes on d6 en passant. I was wondering about maintaining the e5 pawn and playing, I tested out, knight h5, pressure on the heart. You can respond to this in a couple ways. One, it's saying play in the center right away with d4. There is a candidate passed pawn for black in the d pawn. I wasn't too thrilled about this, though. After d4, queen g4, it's saying you're going to have to play g6 there and create a significant weakness on f6. Says it's okay. Do know there is another approach you have here as black. It says throw the king in the corner, and in response to queen g4, rook g8. No weakness on f6. It's kg, no doubt. Rook on g8, but there doesn't seem to be a consistent follow-up to this pressure on g7. f5 moves, e5, potential issue. From here, it's looking at queenside pressure still. d4 advance, d pawn ready to be passed. Okay, how it's playing out here, we do not have knight h5. It's the capture on d6 en passant. Battery formed, f5 break, bishop for knight exchange, queen exchange, endgame ahead, c5 under fire. Now, c4 is played here, and then we have a capture on e6. Black is saddled with an isolated pawn, an isolated passed pawn. If you don't want an isolated pawn, and you are first resolving this tension, this would not be a good way to play it. This rook is just way too active. This pawn hit twice, rook c5 nearby, you're going to be dropping a pawn shortly. So, the pawn gets out of the way. c4. F takes e, f takes e, pair of rooks off, rook d1, move 24, rook b8. Now, a clock update here. White has about 38 minutes remaining to black's 9. Black really has some pressure on him on the clock. Now, black is going on the offensive here, going after the b pawn. Note, you really cannot contest this open d file. The problem with it, there's a rook exchange, and in the end, a very significant pawn is picked up. Past a pawn, past rook pawns in general, nightmares for knights. So we have rook b8, rook d6 with the fork, knight e5, rook captures pawn, knight g4, bishop goes back home to defend the b pawn. Okay, white has won a pawn with that sequence, but must now defend. This knight is pesky, the rook now ready to enter. King f1, king f7, rook e2, and from here rook d5 is played. Now, if black goes in for the check, you have to block. And this would not be a good trade for black. You have to keep rooks on. This is a superior minor piece position for white. Pawns on both wings still. There is a passed pawn that white can create on the queen side. I still tested out this variation. I was a bit curious about the knight quickly drifting into d3. You are hitting a lot of stuff once there, but it goes nowhere. Let's see why. One example line, knight e5, king d2, knight d3, there's bishop e3. Knight takes b, bishop takes a. Very dangerous passed pawn. This is winning for white. If the a pawn is saved, the b pawn is saved. So something like this. No time to take the knight. You'd have to recapture c pawn, pretty much equally as dangerous. This is winning for white. Okay. Black cannot afford a rook exchange. So at this moment plays rook d5. This move supports next knight e5 into d3. The follow-up from here is king e1. Now if white tries to keep the knight out of d3 or e5, so if white tries bishop f4 here, bishop f4, this bishop can be questioned with g5. And if you still want to stay trained on that e5 square, let's say going to c7, well, you're no longer around controlling this d2 square. Relevant, because now this rook can land a check, you would have to block, rook on the second rank, and you pretty much have to contest this rook activity. And we would see some repetition of position. My point, trying to, as white, hold up this maneuver with bishop f4 fails. g5 is there. So it's king e1. Knight e5. Pop quiz. How would you respond here? Pause the video if you'd like. Okay, the best move, the move in the game, b3. Now, the b pawn gets out of the reach, let's say, of the knight. If you, let's say, go with the a pawn, advance, this would fail. Knight check is there, and after you step over with the king, the knight can swipe a pawn with check, double check in this case. So definitely do not want that b pawn to fall with check. So it's b3. Knight d3, check. Another pop quiz, how would you respond here? Pause the video if you'd like. Okay, there's only one move. You must approach the bishop. You must defend the bishop. There's only one way to do it. The move in the game, king d1. If you played a d2, there's knight f4, check, and the rook falls. So in this one, it is king d1. Another pop quiz, what's your move? Pause the video if you'd like. Okay, in the game, we have h5. This turns out to be a blunder. Difficult situation here for black. It's calling for a minor piece exchange, or to first include an exchange of pawns and then the capture. Move order doesn't matter in this case. Do you know the difference between the king on d1 and d2? Knight f4 here, there's a rook block. So if we're to play this out, this goes nowhere for black. This idea to, in the end, win a pawn, you're not just winning a pawn, you're fianchettoing your knight in the process. And now your knight would be trapped. So king f3, knight, soon going to fall. Okay. This was the best play at this stage. Rather than the move in the game h5, it says exchange knight for bishop, and then go in for this fork. Now, black is not winning a pawn here. White's way out of this is with a timely check. This was almost certainly calculated by black, and he saw this position and maybe didn't go too much further. Didn't like the idea that all the base points were covered and white has a significant pawn plus past c pawn here. Black cannot afford a rook exchange. This is a winning king and pawn ending. Note there's no concern of some outside passed pawn. If ever h5, you can hold things up with f4 there before a duo is created and h4 is even an idea. This is a win for white. So what this would mean, black would have to duck the rook exchange and play this endgame. It says that it's still holdable. It's calling it about +1. I played out a few moves from here, advancing the c-pawn, approaching with the king, stopping entry points. But the black king can also get active. So something like this, a5, rook f7, there's rook g5 there, attack and defense. Okay, says that this was black's best path to welcome the rook and pawn endgame. We don't see this exchange though. In this one it is h5, follow up bishop d2, rook a5, bishop e3, a2 covered, a6 is played. Now, if black takes on b3, and then, a consistent follow-up you would want to test out here is, okay, this check is now available. Are you okay allowing this check? You are. In response to this, it says step up with the king, and black really doesn't have anything here. If there's a knight check in this position, the king steps over, king here, there's bishop to d2, so something like this. The knight is ready to be trapped with a line like this, a fork. Also, if the knight goes in a different direction after the check, king c2, if the knight goes here, now we're looking at king b2. Rook is hit, pawn is hit, knight is ready to be hit after the bishop moves. This is losing for black. So this doesn't really go anywhere. It's my point, the capture with the check on a1. We have here a6, b takes c, rook e5, bishop d4, rook exchange avoided, king improvement, and from here rook captures, pawn is played defending the knight. It's already busted at this stage though. Some other try with knight c5, you can remove the piece, exchange minor pieces, and improve the king. This is a 1 rook and pawn ending, 2 pass c-pawns. Okay, in this one, the response to king c2 is rook captures pawn, and after bishop e3, that's move 38, black resigns. The knight is dead. Black's going to lose material from here. The rook is cut off from defending the knight, and where's the knight supposed to go? Knight e5 here is met with bishop f4, a fork, double attack of the knight. Black is lost. Also, trying to bank some material with, let's say, knight check. The rook captures pawn. Okay, there are these 2 connected passers, but this is a very dangerous c-pawn, and you're up a piece here as white. This is winning. So interesting game here, interesting ending. Superior minor piece game here for white. Bishop superior to the knight. Anyhow, your thoughts with this one? Feel free as usual to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.